It is 3 in the morning inside the smallest understate country on earth. A 22-year-old from Switzerland is standing at a locked door, holding a weapon designed 500 years ago, earning less than the baristas in the city. Outside these walls, 100 meters away, a room exists where 133 men locked in, phones surrendered, will decide who leads 1.4 billion people. And at the top of it all, a man in white sits alone in an apartment 600 years old, inheriting a system that has outlasted every person who has ever tried to change it. This is the Vatican. 10 ranks, 1 institution. 2,000 years of the same answer to the same question. The church was not built for you. You were built for the church. Level 1, the Swiss Guard recruit. It is 3 in the morning. You are standing at the bronze door. The corridor behind you is empty. The city of Rome is asleep beyond these walls. You can hear nothing from it. You have been here for 6 hours. You will be here for 6 more. You are holding a halberd, a weapon designed in the present 15th century. You have been trained on modern firearms. The halberd is for the ceremony, for the photograph. You are 22 years old. You came from a canton in central Switzerland. You left in January. Your girlfriend is still there. The institution has scheduled when you can see her because the institution has scheduled everything. Your salary is 1,500 euros a month, tax-free. The Vatican provides housing. 3 19th century buildings on the eastern edge of the Savum city, north of St. Peter's Square. They were built in the 1800s. A private foundation in Freiburg is currently raising 50 million euros to replace them. You are the world's smallest army living in its oldest barracks while strangers solicit donations to give you somewhere better to sleep. In the city outside these walls, a barista earns more. You chose this anyway, or you chose the idea of this. The uniform takes 30 hours to make. 154 separate pieces fitted to your body inside these walls. Vatican did not pay for it. A different private foundation covered the cost. You did not ask about this. You learned it later, the way you learn most things here after you have already committed. You cannot marry yet. The rule is 5 years of service, or the rank of corporal, whichever comes first. You have been here 2 months. The institution has arranged the shape of your personal life. It did not ask. It does not ask. In May, you will take your oath. Every year, new recruits swear their allegiance on the 6th of May. That date is not chosen at random. On the 6th of May, 1527, 147 of your predecessors died defending Pope Clement VII as mercenary armies destroyed this city. Of 189 guards, 42 survived. The rest held the line. The rest died at this door. The ceremony exists to remind you of that. You stand where they stood. You hold what they held. The door you are guarding leads to a world you will never enter. The door stays locked. Level 2, the parish priest. The last Mass ended 3 hours ago. You are locking the church. Not a cathedral, not a basilica. A parish church in a mid-sized city, the kind that appears on no pilgrim's process map, the kind where people bring their children to be baptized and their parents to be buried, and in between, they sometimes come on Saturday afternoons to say the things they cannot say anywhere else. You are the only person left in the building. You genuflect to the altar. You turn off the last light. You walk out into a street you do not own, toward a house the diocese has provided, and you will be back here before 7 tomorrow morning. You have been doing this for 11 years. The street has not changed. The door has not changed. You have taken vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. The vow of chastity is the one people ask about. It is not in the Bible. It was not a requirement in the early church. Celibacy became mandatory through the Council of Trent in 1563, a decision made partly for administrative reasons, to prevent clergy from passing parish assets to their children, a property management solution that became doctrine. The institution does not present it this way. You accepted it without asking how it began. This is what the institution means by obedience. You will never enter the Vatican. You will never sit in a synod. You will never write policy. You will never be consulted about the direction of the institution you represent every day to every person who walks through that door. When something in your parish needs addressing beyond your authority, you write to your bishop. Your bishop writes to Rome. Rome has other priorities. 1.4 billion Catholics exist in the world. Most of them will never meet a cardinal. Most of them will never see the Sistine Chapel, the Apostolic Palace, the inside of the conclave. They will only ever know the Church through you, through the homily you gave this morning, the confession you heard last Tuesday, the funeral you conducted last Thursday for a man whose family had no one else to call. You are the institution's front line. The institution rarely looks back at its own front line. The collection plate passes through your hands every Sunday. It does not stop there. Level 3. The Monsignor. Your title was given to you by the Pope, not personally, through a process. A document was prepared, a recommendation was made, and at some point, your name appeared on a list that was approved by someone who was approved by someone else. The title arrived. You did not attend a ceremony. You received a letter, Monsignor. It means, my lord. You work inside the Roman Curia, one of 30-something dicasteries, each with its own prefect, its own staff, its own carefully maintained sense of importance. You have a small office. The window faces an interior courtyard. Through it, on clear days, you can see the dome of St. Peter's Basilica above the roofline. You can see it. You do not work near it. Your documents are in Latin. Not all of them, but the formal ones, the ones that carry institutional weight. Yes, Latin, a language spoken fluently by fewer people than live in a medium-sized European city. The institution chose it for a reason. Languages that few people read are languages that few people question. You have been here for 8 years. In those 8 years, you have learned that advancement inside the Curia does not work the way advancement works elsewhere. There is no performance review. There is no transparent criteria. There is relationship. There is proximity to the right people at the right moment. There is the careful management of what you say, and to whom, and in which room, and whether the door was open or closed when you said it. The Vatican's inner workings have been compared by people who study institutions for a living to the internal logic of a state that does not explain itself to outsiders. You have found this description accurate. You have not said so out loud. In 2022, the Pope published a new apostolic constitution, the first major restructuring of the Curia in more than 30 years. Documents were circulated. Dicasteries were reorganized on paper. Some titles changed. The relationships did not change. The people did not change. You are still here. The system is still here. This is not cynicism. This is what the institution calls continuity. You process the paperwork that keeps the machinery running. You do not decide what the machinery produces. You are not responsible for what it produces. The institution taught you to understand it this way, and after 8 years, you have found it easier to agree. The document goes in the box. Another one comes out. You sign where it asks you to sign. Nobody outside these walls knows what you do. Inside these walls, that is not considered a problem. Level 4. The Bishop. There are priests waiting outside your office. 3 of them. You can see them through the glass panel. In the door. They have been there since 9 this morning. It is now past 11. You are still on the phone with Rome. You are not speaking. You are listening. This is what most people outside the institution do not understand about your position. The power flows clearly in one direction downward and considerably less clearly in the direction of up. You govern a diocese. You manage a budget, a staff, a school system in 3 parishes, and the pastoral needs of several 100,000 people who consider you their shepherd. None of that gives you leverage over the phone call you are currently on. You were not elected to this position. You were selected. The dicastery for bishops in Rome evaluated candidates. The papal nuncio in your country submitted a report. The Pope approved the appointment. A document arrived. You became a bishop. This process is not presented to you in full while it is happening. You learn about it the way you learned about most things in this institution partially, afterward through inference. Someone recommended you. Someone vouched for you. The system decided you were acceptable. You were not present for that conversation. You were not told it was happening. The phone call ends. You open the door. The three priests come in. They have questions about personnel, about a school funding, dispute about a parishioner who has filed a complaint that has now become a legal matter. You give them answers. You have authority over all of it. What you do not have authority over is what happens when someone in your diocese disagrees with the institution loudly enough for Rome to notice. When that happens, Rome notices. Rome responds. The response does not always come to you first. There have been bishops who raised uncomfortable questions about financial arrangements within the broader institution. Some were transferred. The doctive transfers were not explained publicly. Inside the disintegrative coming system, they did not need to be explained. Everyone understood. You understood too. This is why the phone call lasted 2 hours, and you did not raise the question you had prepared to raise. You folded it back into your notes. You will raise it differently next time, or perhaps not at all. You will find another way. This is what the institution calls prudence. The priests are gone now. You sit at your desk. Outside the window, your diocese continues. People are being born into it, married into it, buried out of it. They have no idea this morning happened. They do not need to know. You have power over everyone below you. You have no power over what gave you that power. This is what the Church calls authority. Level 5. The Archbishop. You have been to Rome enough times that you no longer feel the weight of it. This is a change. The first time you came, you stood in St. Peter's Square and felt something you could not name. Now you walk through it the way you walk, through airports. You know where things are. You know how long things take. You know which conversations happen in which rooms and which conversations never happen in rooms at all. You are attending a synod. Around this table are men you have known for years. The Archbishop of a Northern European country who disagrees with the curious position on a matter of pastoral practice but will not say so directly in this room. The Archbishop of a South American diocese who will say so directly and who will be listened to with great patience and whose words will be noted and who will find that noted is not the same as acted upon. You have watched this process enough times that you can predict how the afternoon will go before lunch is finished. You oversee a metropolitan province. Several dioceses fall under your ecclesiastical authority. You attend the National Bishops' Conference. You have relationships with people in the national government, not formal relationships, not official ones, but the kind that develop when an institution with 2,000 years of presence in a country and an institution with 4 years of electoral mandate need to occasionally be in the same room. Your national church has its own culture. It has its own history, its own wounds, its own particular relationship with the doctrine that comes down from Rome. There are things your people accept readily. There are things they do not. When the gap between what Rome requires and what your people will receive becomes too wide, you stand in the middle. You translate. You find language that satisfies Rome on paper and your people in practice. The institution has a word for this. The word is prudence. You have used it so many times it has become almost true. You learned how the system works by watching the men who came before you. You learned which questions to ask in writing and which to ask in a corridor afterward. You learned that relationships built over decades are worth more than arguments built over facts. You learned that the curia does not respond well to pressure, but responds reasonably well to patience, and that patience, applied consistently over a long enough period, can occasionally look like progress. You brought a question to Rome twice this year. The first time, you were redirected. The second time, you did not bring it. You have learned to work with the system. The system has noticed. This is called advancement. It feels like something else. Level 6. The Papal Nuncio. You are seated at a state dinner. White tie. The flag of the host country behind the foreign minister's chair. Crystal glasses, a table. Long enough that you cannot see the faces at the far end. You have attended dinners like this in 7 countries. The flowers change, the protocol does not. You are the apostolic nuncio. In diplomatic terms, you hold the rank of full ambassador. by convention, established through centuries of practice and codified in the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. You are automatically the dean of the Creator, diplomatic corps in this country. You outrank every other ambassador in this room. You outrank the local cardinal, if there is one. The convention does not explain why. It does not need to. The convention simply is. You graduated from the Pontifical Ecclesiastical Academy in Rome. It was founded in 1701. It is the oldest school of diplomacy in the world. The foreign service you trained for predates the play. Foreign services of most of the nations currently represented at this table. The Holy See maintains full diplomatic relations with more than 180 countries. It holds permanent observer status at the United Nations. It has a seat at negotiations that sovereign nations conduct among themselves. The territory it governs is 4 square kilometers surrounded by Rome. There is no army. There is no navy. There are 135 Swiss guards and an institution 2,000 years old. The foreign minister raises his glass. You raise yours. You have done this before. The people at this table represent governments. Some of those governments are a few decades old. Some are a few centuries. The oldest among them is a fraction of the age of what you represent. You are not thinking about this. You stopped thinking about it years ago. It has become simply the water you swim in, the unremarkable background fact of your daily existence that would astonish anyone seeing it for the first time. Faith and politics dissolved into each other so gradually in your career that you cannot identify. The moment it happened, you serve God. You do this through foreign ministries, through bilateral meetings, through careful language and communiques, through dinners like this one, where what matters is not what is said but what is not said, and who notices the difference. The institution did not send you here to pray. It sent you here because prayer alone has never been sufficient. Your institution has been navigating the courts of the powerful since before their courts existed. You are the continuity. They are the episode. Level 7, the prefect of a dicastery. Your office is inside the apostolic palace, not near it, inside it. The distinction matters less than you expected when you first arrived. A room is a room. The ceiling is higher than most. The view, on clear days, is the gardens. You have a personal secretary, a small staff, and a door that people knock on before opening. This is what the job looks like from outside. From inside, it is something different. You are the head of a Vatican department. The institution runs more than 30 of them. Congregations, tribunals, secretariats, councils, each with its own jurisdiction, its own staff, its own carefully maintained territory. The heads of these departments are the men who run the Catholic Church on a daily basis. The Pope sets direction. You execute. You interpret. You decide what execution and interpretation look like in practice. The dicastery for bishops evaluates every episcopal candidate in the world. Every bishop in every country passes through a process that includes a report from the local nuncio, an evaluation from this office, and a recommendation to the Pope. From this room, the face of the global church is shaped for the next 30 years. The names change. The room does not change. Observers who have studied the Vatican's internal structure have compared it, in terms of its difficulty, to understand from the outside to states that do not publish their procedures. You have found this comparison clarifying rather than insulting. An institution that explained itself fully would lose something essential. The mystery is not incidental. The mystery is structural. In 2012, the Pope's personal butler was arrested by Vatican police. According to his own account, he had been passing confidential documents to a journalist, not to cause harm, he said, but to protect the Pope from the corruption surrounding him. His claim was that the Pope could not see what was happening inside his own household. He had worked as the Pope's butler since 2007. He had full access. He had watched. 3 cardinals were appointed to investigate. According to investigators, what they found extended beyond financial irregularities. The full dossier was transferred to the incoming Pope. He began his papacy with complete knowledge of what he was inheriting. You inherited something similar. The Vatican Bank, the Institute for the Works of Religion had been used, according to Italian investigators, as a vehicle for moving money that could not be moved elsewhere. When European banking regulations tightened after 2008, every major financial institution in the region complied. The Vatican Bank did not. Italian finance. Police began monitoring transactions. They intercepted a transfer of 23 million euros with no clear origin. The matter was managed. You do not say managed, you say resolved. The documents that reach your desk are not the same documents that leave it. Something changes in the present passage. It has always changed. The institution has been making that change for centuries in rooms like this one, by people whose names are not recorded in the histories written outside these walls. No one outside asks what changes. You are the system. The system does not explain itself. That is the system. Level 8. The Cardinal. In any room on earth, people stand when you enter. This is not a courtesy. It is a protocol. It has been a protocol for so long that the people performing it no longer think about it. They simply rise. You have watched it happen in government offices, in university halls, in the dining rooms of men who bow to no one else. They rise. They wait. They sit again after you. Sit. The red hat precedes you into every room before you arrive. You have been a cardinal for 14 years. The hat arrived the way most things arrive in this institution, through a process you were not present for, in a conversation you were not part of, confirmed, through a ceremony in which you knelt and received and said the words required. Afterward, everyone treated you differently. The institution had spoken. That was sufficient. You are what the Church calls a prince, not metaphorically. The cardinalate has been described in those terms since the 12th century. Princes of the Church. The language is precise and the language is intended. You live accordingly in an apartment in Rome, a personal secretary, the weight of accumulated deference that follows you through airports and corridors and the anterooms of heads of state who have been briefed that your arrival requires acknowledgement. You have spent 50 years building toward this. The parishes, the dioceses, the archdiocese, the years in Rome learning how the curia operates, the careful cultivation of relationships across 4 continents, the synods attended, and the documents read, and the positions stated and the positions adjusted, and the long, patient work of becoming the kind of person the institution is willing to elevate. 50 years. In 1983, the Code of Canon Law was revised. Among the changes, a rule was clarified and made absolute. Cardinals over the age of 80 are excluded from participating in papal conclaves, not retired, not reduced in rank, not stripped of title, simply excluded from that one room, that one vote. You turned 81 in March. The conclave is in May. You will read about it in the newspapers the way the rest of the world reads about it. The cardinals will enter the Sistine Chapel. The doors will close. The world will watch the chimney. White smoke will rise. A name will be announced from the balcony to a crowd of hundreds of thousands, and somewhere in that moment, the future of the institution you have served for 50 years will be decided by men in that room. You will not be in that room. The noble guard, the mounted corps, whose officers were required by rule to come from Roman noble families, was dissolved in 1970 by Pope Paul VI. A decree, one decree. Centuries of tradition ended on a Tuesday. The families it had served were not consulted. The institution does not consult. The institution decides. The institution had already decided about you on the day the code was written, decades before you were old enough to be affected by it. You understand this. You have always understood that the institution gives and the institution arranges the terms under which what it gave can be adjusted. You accepted those terms at the beginning without reading them carefully. Most people do. The red hat is yours. The vote is not. The institution gave you both of those things at different times. It kept the right to take one back. Level 9. The Cardinal Elector. The doors of the Sistine Chapel are closing. You have surrendered your phone. The windows have been sealed. The chimney above the roof has been fitted with its stove, the same procedure, the same logic it has followed since $1,800. 14. What goes in is the ballot. What comes out is smoke. The world will read the smoke. There are 133 of you. You come from 6 continents. Over the past several days, in the general congregations before the lock-in, you have watched men reveal their positions carefully. You have watched other men reveal nothing at all. You have assessed and been assessed. Now the doors are closed. Now it begins. Above the altar, Michelangelo's Last Judgment covers every surface from floor to ceiling. The saved ascend. The damned are pulled under by their own weight. The painting was commissioned by the same institution that is now choosing its sovereign. It has watched every conclave since 1483. It will watch this one. 4 ballots a day at most, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. A failed round produces black smoke. A successful round produces white. The world is watching the chimney. This system was built because of what happened in 1268. In the Italian town of Viterbo, cardinals gathered to elect a successor to Clement IV. They argued. They could not agree. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The empty seat stretched for 2 years and 9 months. Local citizens, exhausted, reportedly tore the roof off the building where the cardinals were deliberating and restricted their food supply. A pope was finally chosen in 1271. His name was Gregory X. His first significant act was to ensure this never happened again. He established the conclave from the Latin conclave, locked with a key, isolated, uncomfortable, until they agree. The system he built is the system you are inside, right now. In 1922, a cardinal from Boston sailed from New York, transferred to a faster ship, boarded an express train from Naples, and ran through the streets of Rome and arrived to find the conclave already over. He had missed it by hours. He confronted the newly elected pope. The waiting period between a pope's death and the conclave was subsequently extended from 10 to 15 days. The system adjusts for embarrassment. It does not adjust for much else. The conclave of 2025 lasted 2 days. On the 4th ballot, on the 8th of May, white smoke rose from the chimney at 6:07 in the evening. 150,000 people in St. Peter's Square read it before the announcement was made. The man elected was Cardinal Robert Prevost of Chicago, the first American pope in the history of the Church. For decades it had been understood consistently across generations of cardinals that a pope from the United States was not something the institution would choose. Too much power already in one country. The thinking was unanimous, and then it was not. He was chosen because, in the judgment of 133 men, he was the least American of the word. Available Americans. He had spent half his life in Peru. He moved through the institution like someone had absorbed slowly, over decades, until what remained was acceptable. The system declared this impossible. The system chose it anyway. You have made your choice. You filed out of the room. The smoke has already risen. What happens next is no longer yours. 2/3 agreed. This is called discernment. Level 10, the Pope. The balcony is behind you now. 150,000 people were in St. Peter's Square an hour ago. You spoke to them. You gave your first blessing. You said the words that were required. Then you came inside, and the doors closed, and now there is this: a room, a desk, a chair, a phone. The papal apartments of the Apostolic Palace have existed in various forms since the 14th century. 600 years of the men who sat where you are sitting now. They are not here. Tonight it is only you and the institution you have just agreed to carry. You are the absolute sovereign of Vatican City. Legislative authority, executive authority, judicial authority, all of it concentrated in one office, in one person, in you. You are the spiritual leader of 1.4 billion Catholics on every continent. You were elected for life. There is no term limit. There is no mechanism by which the institution can remove you once it has chosen you, short of your own death or the act of walking away. In 2013, Pope Benedict XVI walked away, the first pope to resign since Gregory the 12th in 1415, 600 years between them. The institution does not release its own easily. Even departure requires a precedent that is centuries old. Your predecessor chose not to live here. Pope Francis moved into Casa Santa Marta, the Vatican guest house, rather than these apartments. He said it was to avoid the isolation the palace creates. He wanted daily contact with other people. He wanted to remain present. He was still isolated. In 2012, his predecessor's personal butler passed thousands of confidential documents to a journalist. The butler said he did it to protect the Pope. His account was that the Pope could not see what was happening inside his own household. The man, with the most intimate daily access to the most powerful man in the church, believed the only way to help him was to go around him. The institution eventually pardoned the butler. The institution did not change what the butler had observed. Pope Francis arrived knowing all of it. He had read the dossier. He had read it before he unpacked. He spent 12 years trying to change what the dossier described. In 2022, he published the first major restructuring of the Roman Curia in more than 30 years. Dicasteries were reorganized. Documents were rewritten. The names of things changed. The Curia remains. He passed the same problem to you. Your first act after your election was to ask the heads of the dicasteries to continue in their roles. For the moment, you issued a statement saying you needed time for reflection, prayer, and dialogue before making appointments or confirmations. This was described as wisdom. It was also the only available move. The institution that chose you because you were acceptable to enough of them. Acceptable is another word for continuous. The man they elect to reform the system is always, in some essential way, a formation of it. You spent 30 years in their seminaries, their missions, their offices, their dicasteries. You were shaped by what you were, sent to change. You have a desk, a phone, 700 years of walls, 2,000 years of institution. It was here before you arrived. It will be here after you are gone. You began outside the bronze door, 22 years old, a weapon from the 15th century, 1,500 euros a month. A building strangers are still raising money to repair. You were guarding a world you would never enter. You end in the room that world was built to protect. Between them, every vow made in a parish no one in Rome will ever visit. Every vote cast in a chapel, no one outside can enter. Every document signed in. A language designed to limit who can read it. At every rank, the institution gave you something. At every rank, the institution arranged the terms. At every rank, from the bronze door to the throne, the same system was waiting. The church was not built for you. You were built for the church. The cycle continues. Whew.